perceived it really well.
See the duck?
Yeah. I can't really relate to chopping off my hair.
No! You have the distinguished look already. You're already there.
I really wanted to do this. It's just the time.
I go through the 1,200 photos we took and pick one.
Big guy behind my vocal things.
And I had like a very detailed schedule of which shots to work on each day, and then that's 7 days a week.
I tipped over that edge, and that was a really exciting moment for me.
I'm still laughing about that intro about Jurassic Park and elephants.
She still hasn't got any elephants, so it's a win-win so far.
All those little things that you forgot how to deal with.
But it was so much work to reach people.
You just like flow love, and it's really nice.
It is the 10-year anniversary. I can't even speak of Eclectic Art.
I never believed in the American dream. All I knew was how to survive.
I gave you everything and treated you like a daughter from the beginning.
I'll never be like you.
Chinatown doesn't change for anyone.
So when you were dreaming of coming to America, did you think it was going to be this way?
I didn't think. I just came.
What if I can offer you something better?
She really likes you. Think you're special, don't you? You're not. You're just my mom's little errand rat. You understand? Huh?
We need another Snakehead for the Taiwan job.
I'll go. I've done it once, I can do it again.
Go!
Hands up.
Can you tell me why she's here?
Mom says she wants her here. You know, I worry about you sometimes. Why are you still doing this?
You survive your way, and I survive mine.
Bingo. We're gonna have some problem with you.
I'm gonna smuggle drugs.
You saved me a fortune.
I didn't do that for you. I did that to survive.
What would you do if someone betrayed your family?
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts, based here in Seattle, Washington. Thank you so much for joining me on this Thursday, the 21st of October, 2021. And actually, one quick housekeeping detail before we get to tonight's interview. The next live stream that I have scheduled right now that's confirmed is on Friday the 29th, so a week from tomorrow. And that will be the new Fun Table Sessions, the October edition. And I'm really looking forward to doing that. And for those that aren't familiar with those, that's where I bring back guests that I've interviewed. And in most cases, they have not met each other previously. And we just kind of shoot the breeze for up to 2 hours with these new Fun Table Sessions. The old ones used to go sometimes 3-4 hours. So sometimes they're funny and silly. Sometimes they're a little serious. We get to know each other better, including myself sometimes. They ask me questions. So that's going to be, again, scheduled for next Friday, the 29th at 7 p.m. Pacific time. And that will be, as far as I know, the last scheduled live stream I have in this hobbit hole that I currently live in. As people know, that I am in the process of moving locally. And so once everything's kind of up and running and I'm kind of settled in at my new place, then I will be returning to the virtual world. Things outside, I've got a few live events already scheduled into for November and so on. And if you'd like to know what I have coming up, you can follow me as Eclectic Arts Media, one word, on Instagram. That's where I post everything first. And then some of that information migrates over to other social media platforms. If this is your first time watching me on my YouTube channel, if you could do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button. And I always greatly appreciate that. If you could like the video, leave a comment if something that you feel inclined to do so, that's great as well. There's also the notification bell. If you want to know when my live streams are coming up next, just please be aware that you will get a notification about those. And if you're on the Twitch side of things, if you could follow me there, that's where I started all of this virtual work, can't even speak tonight, on the Alice virtual tour. And they're actually heading out on their in-person tour tomorrow, which is really exciting. So this whole thing's been kind of a whirlwind in terms of the virtual work, and now going back into in-person work and a little bit of both. And we're kind of go from there. Hey, Captain Blackwood, good to see you. Hopefully things are good down in Sin City. And yeah, man. So obviously, you know that Alice is going on tour again starting tomorrow, and they also have the live stream available too for those that can't be there in Los Angeles. You can buy a ticket. I think it's only $10 or something, and it's going to be like a 3-hour show. So everyone has an opportunity to see the band, and I can't recommend them enough. It's AL1CE if you're looking for them on YouTube or anywhere on the net. And so that's what's coming up for me. And again, let's kind of get to things. As people know, I just love talking to people related to film because it's an area that I want to keep learning more and more about. And every now and then I get a chance to talk to some really, really talented folks involved with the film industry, and tonight is no different. So my guest today is a talented filmmaker and artist. His new film is an inspired crime thriller called Snakehead. We just watched the trailer. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts Virtual Studio, Evan Jackson Leong.
Hey, Mark.
See if I can do this. Oh, hang on 1 second. There we go. Hi, Evan.
Hey, Mark.
I'm doing really, really good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to this conversation. Really cool intro, too. It's very interesting, all the different kind of people you've interviewed.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. I try to live up to the Eclectic Arts name and have people from all different walks of life in the arts realm for sure. So, yeah, and who knows, maybe there'll be a clip from this interview in the next intro that I do. So we'll kind of see. And I want to say hi to Ove, who's joining us from Norway. Gosh, isn't it like maybe like 4 a.m. over there, Ove, in Norway right now? I think it's about a 9-hour difference, but thank you for joining us. And so, Evan, let's talk about Snakehead and kind of get into it without giving away too many spoilers. What is this film about for people that didn't see the trailer and are just hearing about it for the first time right now?
Sure. You know, I mean, Snakehead, the way I usually pitch it to people, it's you know, I'm a huge fan of Godfather, Scarface, and Goodfellas, and you know, the way I pitch this film is like, you know, if you've seen Scarface, instead of so my movie is, instead of a Cuban man, it's a Chinese woman, and instead of smuggling cocaine into the country, she's smuggling people. And you know, it's this kind of story of inspired by true events, and you know, it's about the Chinatown underworld in the modern era.
Okay, so there you go, folks, and that's probably another reason why I like the film so much, because I love the Godfather films and Scarface and the Untouchables and all those types of things. There's so many great crime films and everything else, but I'm just kind of curious too, and we'll kind of get into the whole timeline of when the film was made, shot, all that kind of thing. But before we do that, with this being your first feature film that is a narrative, something that's not a documentary, of that background, did you know this is the story that you wanted to tell, or were there maybe like 2 or 3 ideas and you're trying to figure out which one to go with first?
No, this is you know, I come from a documentary background, and I've been doing documentaries for the last 20 years. So, you know, when I got in a narrative, it was a little different, and I knew that if I get one shot to make a movie, this is the one I want to tell. This is the story I want to tell. And you know, that, you know, I think you need that to make a movie. It's so difficult. There's so much energy and resources and favors, and you know, just the amount of effort and work. It's so difficult. So, you know, you don't really want to waste it on something that you don't care about, you know, that you're not passionate about, because you won't be able to last. You won't see it through to the end.
Very wise words, and those are words I've heard echoed by several other filmmakers I've had the pleasure of talking with about how it needs to be something, one, that you're passionate about, and two, there's so many moving parts to making a film that it's in some ways it's almost a miracle that any film gets made at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a lot of respect for narrative films, but you know, after going through it myself, I'm like, wow, it really takes quite a lot of effort. You know, if you have little money, you have a lot of money, it's still very, very difficult. And that process, you know, as a director, it's a lot of weight to carry.
Yeah, for sure. And so, and I see Obe's talking about Carlito's Way, so that's some film he's mentioning with the gangster theme for sure, some Al Pacino. And so, how far back do we go when you first started working on the idea of Snakehead and getting all these, like you're saying, all the support, all these pieces in place before you even started shooting, one frame of the film?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started as a filmmaker, under the mentorship of Jackson Leong, I always wanted to make my first narrative feature. And so, I was dabbling a lot in documentaries, music videos, and, and I was looking for that feature film, and I couldn't find that story that really, that stuck. And then I heard about this human smuggler in New York Chinatown. And then I heard that, the fact that she was a woman made this story so interesting to me. And that made it like, that's the one I want to tell. And, this is maybe 2008. And, at that point I'm like, you know what, I want to move to New York and live there and figure out, what this environment is like, what this community is like before I tell this story. And so I did that in 2008. And you start, obviously then you have these ideas of what it can be, and you're writing. And, again, I'm like 26, so I'm a very different person than I am now, and, in that hindsight, when you look at this film, I see different parts of my life with different choices that are made in the film, and that's, it's kind of a crazy thing to think about, a piece of art that you've been working on for 14 years, and it's finally done, and it's finally ready for the world to see.
Wow, yeah, no, you're right. That is crazy. That stretch of time of 14 years, holy moly. And like you said, you're going to be in different stages of life yourself, different things you experience, and how that's getting put into the film. And and I think I was mentioning to you pre-show that one thing I really loved about the film was just the grittiness of it. And so did a lot of that come from being in New York yourself, and that's what you wanted to get into the film, like you said, your influences, or is it some other dynamics?
Absolutely. That style is probably one of my strengths. That's something that it's always kind of come easy to me, and that's always something I gravitate to in filmmaking, right? There's some great, narrative directors. There's some, some great directors, actors. There's different kind of directors, right? And for me, my strengths were always in the style and the visuals. And so I knew that's something that I want to make sure there is a presence felt about Chinatown, right? I wanted to, make Chinatown a character. And, by doing so, you think about Chinatown, you think about New York Chinatown, that's a place that's been around. These buildings have been around for, over 100 years. There's just paint, layer after paint after paint after paint, layers on grease, on just levels and layers of years of salt, right? You walk around New York Chinatown, you feel that sort of grit and that the soul that lives there, right? And we want to make sure that the world has that feel. And I had a great collaboration with my cinematographer Ray Huang, who actually grew up there in New York Chinatown, and we talked a lot about the visuals and how do we lay the layers of Chinatown in this film, right? And I think it's the patina, it's the layers of paint in the hallways, it's it's the grittiness, it's the we didn't want to this era of digital filmmaking, you can make things super clean, but we're like, no, we got to go against that and give it more organic, palpable sort of feel. And I can get more into this. I could talk about this for days if you want. If you follow up, what do you say, Mark? You want to hear more about the
I want to hear all of it. Yeah, I've got time.
All right, cool. So, yeah, because I'm just, I'm answering all sorts of questions here. But, there were, when we initially, worked on this film, we thought about there's these three worlds, right? There's three worlds that have visual rules. And, the first world is Chinatown, New York Chinatown. It's the one that me and you, the tourists, everyone sees, right? You're a customer, you're walking through the streets, you see this layer and you see this world. That's like the public world. Then there's the second world, which is behind that, and it's like, it's where the cooks are, the chefs are, the business owners, their back rooms, the bosses, the massage parlors, the lobster houses. This is like second layer. And then what we wanted to add a certain layer was the third layer is the underworld, which no one really gets to see. And that's the world where we're living a lot in, but we have to make sure we jump to each one because it's always connected by the middle. And, when we think about the film, there are very three distinct sort of worlds that we go in and out of. And, I think it was important to make sure that Chinatown had a presence and we visually told it for what it is.
Well, you very much succeeded because to me, if for people, again, that haven't had a chance to watch this, and you will next Friday, the 29th, when it officially comes out, Snakehead is, it really makes you feel like you are in Chinatown, and like you just said, on 3 different levels. And one of those levels you'd never get to see in terms of the underground. My grandfather's barbershop was in the Chinatown here in Seattle, and my mom lived above the shop. And so as a kid, we would go there to get our haircuts. So I remember going to the back room there, and it was kind of scary back there because it was dark and it was like, things are kind of crawling around and stuff. Yeah. And he would go from there to maybe some of the restaurants that he knew the owners of. So if you had to get to the bathroom, you had to kind of walk some kind of weird way to get to the back. And even the back, I was like, what is this other stuff back here?
I mean, these are the Bruce Lee place spots, right? Down there in Chinatown, right?
Yeah, yep, totally that kind of thing. So I got to see some of that. And then unfortunately, when we had the massacre that happened, that was right across the street from my grandfather's shop, when 10 people were killed at a gambling parlor down there. And so I think for me, I didn't grow up in that, but I was, on the outskirts of it through my family. And I think that's another thing why I kind of gravitate towards some of these films, because it reminds me of some of that feel of just being in there. It could be the middle of the day and it still has that vibe to it. And you totally captured it. So that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing that's easy, was one of the most exciting parts, and actually probably easier things to do on this film.
Okay, and that's the always saying I've been to San Francisco's Chinatown. Okay, that's cool. So as you mentioned that it was taking, like 14 years of your life of kind of getting this whole thing together in different pieces and all that. How did it? When did it get to a point, like a certain year, when you're like, okay, we can get a chunk of this thing done, or was it like piece to piece to piece over the years, or because I'm kind of wondering, did it change and evolve then? Started off with one idea and then changed to something else.
Yeah, why it takes so long, right? I mean, I give you the basic timeline of the movie, right? So 2008, I write it. I moved to New York 2009. And it's the first draft 2008, so there's probably 120 revisions to this point, right? I mean, who knows? Maybe more, probably more. And major revisions. So, that was the first draft in 2008, and then moved to New York. At the time I was, as an indie filmmaker, you're constantly just working on a lot of projects all the time. They're all little seeds, and, hopefully one sprouts. And, at the time I was working on this little basketball documentary, and, this kid was in Harvard basketball, right? This Asian American kid was in Harvard basketball. And we thought, I was like, oh, this is a great D1 basketball story of this Asian American for the Bay Area. And he actually makes the NBA, and he gives us what the world known as Linsanity, in 2012. And so my little seed of that documentary blows up. And so that kind of takes a big detour in this film, right? I've always wanted to still make Snakehead, but, it's like, oh, I should focus my energy on this other documentary that, just the world wants to see. And so, then we take out 2011 to 2000, maybe 13. And after that, it's great. I'm like, I went to Sundance. I have these opportunities. I have a manager. It's like, what's your next movie? I'm like, I want to make this movie Snakehead that I've been working on since 2008. And, they're like, awesome. So this is a great idea. This is a great script. You can do it. Who do you want? And I'm like, oh, I want to, I always thought Lucy Liu would be a perfect character for this, role for this. And, he's like, oh, I know Lucy's manager. We'll send her the script. Send the script, liked the script, signed on. She was the EP. And we're like, okay, now we got to raise money. And then that takes about 3 years of trying to raise money, and it's impossible. Like we just can't. We just every time we have a billionaire on the hook, keep strings us along, and then pulls out, and then another billionaire comes, and it's just this 3-year thing of trying to make this movie. And at a certain point, I'm like, I don't know this will ever happen. This is, I think now, 2021 Asian movie with that's good script, good idea. I think you could raise the money, but 2015, 2014, no one's looking at these kind of movies, and it's not there's not many streamers, there's just not a lot of other options for this kind of film, and people just don't want these kind of stories, or they don't know about these stories. So again, 2016, I'm like, you know what, we got to part ways, unfortunately, so that I just got to make this movie. Not the way she needs, with Lucille, you need to do a certain way, right? But I'm like, okay, I got to be scrappy. I got to do indie. I got to kickstart and make this movie for $10,000, $100,000, whatever money I can get on Kickstarter. I'm gonna make this movie, and that point, it's like it's fine. It's like it's totally fine. This is what happens in Hollywood all the time, right? Projects go or tasks, they fall apart. This is just what happens. Time goes by, timing's not right. I mean, she was in the middle of elementary at the height of it, so there was a lot going on with her too. So it was no fault on anyone's end. It was just the reality, I think, of a situation of not being able to raise the money because of our current state of Asian America. So I raised some money on Kickstarter. We get like $80,000. I find some one investor, I get my parents, I invest, and we go into production in 2017, January 2017 in New York City, and it's freezing, and we shoot most of it there, but then over the course of the next 6 months, because we're indie and because there's such big set pieces in this film, we were always trying to find free locations and free situations. And things that you just we have a boat in our movie. We have a lot of different crazy things in this movie that you have to schedule them around the budget, which is no money. So I think if imagine if you have money, if you have millions of dollars, you just pay someone $20,000 a day to use their place. We $20,000 probably that lasts us 2 weeks, right? I mean, at that point. So, we can't spend that money, but we can find a location like, hey, we can find this free boat in Palm Beach, Florida. Some guy wants to help us out because they heard of us, and we were calling every port and any place that was a coast. So we got to go there. So, but, we can't do that till then because this actor's got a schedule here and this and this. And so, it takes about 6 months to do most of the principal photography. I mean, we had this big sort of chunk in the beginning of like maybe 30 days. And then, then it's just one-offs here and there because, ultimately for me, I appreciate it as a first-time filmmaker too, because I got to shoot stuff and then figure out and edit and then come back and shoot stuff. And so it actually, because I never did this before and I didn't really have someone guiding me, it gave me a chance to, learn and stop and learn and go. Because a lot of times you're in production for, 6 weeks straight. You're just in it. You're just trying to execute. But I think for me, ultimately, it was a blessing in disguise that I got to have that breakup. And so it took about I would say 6 months over the course of maybe total like 40 days there that we shot all of it. And then then 2016, 17, Trump is the president, and I'm lucky because I'm just editing this movie. And that takes a little bit longer than I anticipate. It takes about a whole year of trying to figure it out, and then another year with an editor to figure out. Oh, actually, no, it wasn't. It was like 6 months with this other editor. And my original editor was in the other coast in LA while I was in New York. So it just slowed the process down a lot. And it was a big movie. And then 2019 we 2019 we finished the film, like early in 2000, like end of 2018, 2019. But now we got to do the sound mix. Now we got to do the color, and we got to get it for free. So we got guys that love the movie, but we have to work around their schedule because they're working for free, and at this point, that's fine. I can get amazing work out of these people that are passionate about this film, but they can only do it on their free time. It's okay. Then, I think, we didn't get into any festivals, so it was really sad. And, then last year we were supposed to premiere at this Asian at CAM for closing night in 2019, 20, but then COVID hit, so that stalled us out, and then we didn't know where we were gonna go, right? We had no idea. And then come this year, Brian just he submitted to all these festivals. We get into Santa Barbara International Film Festival. And then that's, we're like, wow, great. The movie has a home. It has a premiere. The Santa Barbara International Film Festival is pretty prestigious. So, this is good. This is great. And then, we get a sales agent. We sell the film. Samuel Goldwyn gets us. We get into Toronto. We're going to be in theaters next week. It's been this crazy ride and journey for this whole time, all the whole time too, I'm working my other jobs. I'm doing jobs that pay me, so, it can't be full time. This is a passion project that, I want to make sure I do it right and get it done right versus, giving up early, right? Because films in general, you need to go 120%. You need to go 110%. Like you go 98, it's not enough. You don't have the chance to tell everyone like, well, if I had this, if I had that, there's no excuses with any film, long or short. And you don't get the opportunity to talk about that with the audience. So if it better be, perfect. And, I think that's the sort of process I think with filmmaking. And so that's why this took a little bit longer than I anticipated. But, next time I do this, hopefully there'll be money. And, I learned so much, so I know how to execute this on a much better level. I think there was this one part of directing that I had no idea about, right? And that was actual directing. I never directed a narrative feature film. So doing this for the first time was just, now I know I can do it.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that incredible timeline of everything. And like I've mentioned before with other filmmakers when they've come on and talked about their various timelines, for people that watch Snakehead next week, now how much not only passion and energy and time and effort and starts and stops and everything else that went into it. So when you're watching a film and thinking, and especially in this day and age, that people are so easy to dismiss something, that's just like, oh, that was kind of okay. And then they just move right on to the next thing. It's like, well, did you actually take the time to look at this and really suck it all in? If you're an artistic person, I think you will. If you're someone who's black and white, then you might just be like, well, this is like any other film I've seen or whatever, and move on to the next thing. And you're totally missing it. And I think the passion project piece is really, really huge for people to kind of understand that you can take that to any aspect of your life, that if you're passionate about something, yeah, like you said, you have to give 120% all the time, and there's really no excuses with it. If you try to let up on it a little bit, it'll show, and even it'll just stop, or you'll end up with an inferior product or something else. It's just not really going to be what you actually wanted people to take in and see, hear, whatever your project is. So I absolutely applaud you for staying the course with something over that amount of time and not saying fuck it and giving up and moving on to something else. Because I'm sure there's probably times you're like, yeah, like I don't know if this is going to happen. So in the meantime, I'm going to work on some of these other ideas and other kind of things. And then, well, let's try to find another person that maybe can help be a backer. And oh, yeah, great, you're on board. And then they pull out, and you're like, well, shit, now we go again. So it can't be easy to be like during that process, but that here you are, yeah, in 2021. That it's ready to hit theaters. It's ready. You're talking to someone like me who had no idea what this film was until 2 weeks ago or so. That's got to finally be that the residual effect of all this work and sacrifice. Like now it's out there. It's going to be out there really soon. People get to see it. And like you said, this can be really a springboard for the next one that you do, because you have so much underneath you now that you've learned. You're going to have feedback coming from people who have no idea what this film is about until they watch it. And you have people in the chat right now that hopefully you guys will watch it and kind of go from there. But yeah, that's, again, I'm just dumbfounded when I hear timelines and amount of work, and it just inspires me that when I have something that I want to work on, you got to remember what Evan said. You got to go for it, and you got to keep going for it and keep staying the course. You can't. Yeah, you're going to have setbacks. Yeah, you're going to have some other things. But how bad do you really want this to get made? And if you really want it bad enough, then you hang in there with it. Yeah,
I mean, I'm a testament to that hard work pays off, and at the same time, I do know that in the end, we're even if no one, if I never had a place at home for this film, I wanted to get to a place that I was going to be happy with it, and in the end, like when no one cared, when nobody was talking, there was nobody talking to me a year ago. Nobody was trying to interview me, but now, I mean, at that point, I was very happy with the film. I was like, I like the way this film is, and if the world is not ready for it, it's fine. If no one wants to see it, that's fine, because I'm excited, happy to do it, right? And I'm happy to see it. I like the way the movie is, and I think I really do. You make art for yourself ultimately.
Absolutely true. It reminds me, as a musician, from me being a musician, that they always talk about that you want to make sure that you're writing songs for what you like, because if you write for somebody else or for an audience and they don't like it, and if you don't like it, then you got nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so it's great that not only were you super happy with the film, but the powers that be started to come around and kind of wake up to the fact that here's a quality film out here that an audience needs to see. And we haven't even gotten, and I see Ove's talking about that Asian cinema has terrible distribution in Europe, that he hasn't seen, hardly anything gets released over there except for Hong Kong classics. So, well, that's unfortunate, Ove. Hopefully something that's kind of also where the digital thing kind of helps out, I would think. That
digital's kind of changing the game, right? I mean, this world's getting smaller, right? And yeah. I mean, I'm excited to see the different audiences out there for this film.
Yeah, for sure. So when you had the screening at the Santa Barbara Festival, and so what was it like when I'm assuming that you had a chance to actually be at a screening with a live audience?
Well, Santa Barbara was actually a drive-in, so it was actually perfect. All the nerves and the anxiety that you would normally get with a first screening with an audience, you couldn't see it or feel it because everyone's in their cars, and so at the end everyone honks their horn, so it's like that's great because you're like, it's so loud, you're like, oh my god, they love the film, but it's his horns. So yeah, that was an easy first one. I got to see for the first time in New York with some people at the New York Asian Film Festival, with people. I got in Toronto, I got to see that. So yeah, but outside of that, not really. But it is nice to talk to people about it, because there's been probably maybe less than 50 people in this 14-year sort of journey that has actually seen the movie. So this is exciting for me. I'm excited for the rest of the world to see it too. Okay, yeah, I think there was quite a few. I'm thinking of there was a local film here called The Paper Tigers that was made. I love those guys. Yeah, I interviewed Bao, and gosh, that was actually before he was doing the film festival circuit for that film. And I know he was talking about some of the drive-in premieres that he had, and that it was so freaking loud when they're honking their horns at the end of the film and everything. So that's really cool too, because I think again that doesn't really matter what your art is. If you're writing a play, or if you're doing a song or doing a film, that's obviously the one piece of it. You want to be happy with yourself as the artist, but then once you put out in front of people, that's a whole second piece of it too. That becomes really interesting to see how are they taking it in. Maybe they're connecting with it on a whole way that you didn't even think about. No,
And
absolutely. I think that's totally possible, right? And that's exciting. That's exciting. I mean, I think Chloe Zhao said that, like, when people ask her, like, what do you want people to get from your film? And, she says, people should get what they need to get out of my films, whatever it is in their life that they need to get through her films. And I think that's exciting, right? When people come up with things that I didn't even intend,
Yeah, and that's definitely the beauty of art. You never know how someone's going to interpret it and how it's going to resonate with people for sure. And even like people here that are in the chat, like I'm thinking about Alex down in Las Vegas. We met because of a band in Los Angeles called Alice. Prior to that, I didn't know who Alex was, and he's been a strong supporter of what I do. And he's gotten to know me pretty well too. So yeah, there's this digital virtual thing has really opened up doors for a lot of artists in other mediums. But yeah, it's got to be. I'm 51, so I love old school stuff. You're actually in a theater or have something tangible in your hand, or when if a Blu-ray comes out of Snakehead or something like that. I want that. I want that kind of stuff for sure. I want the poster on my wall kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm old school like that too. I'm old school like that too. I mean, it's nice that I may have to make some DVDs. I'll send you a DVD if you want.
Absolutely. I love that stuff.
I mean, it's not like we ever made them or anything, but I had to make a couple, and I couldn't have to go buy DVD players cases from Amazon, because they don't exist anywhere anymore.
Yeah, no, I would love that. I cherish those kind of things, and if they come actually from the artist, I cherish it even that much more. I mean, it stays in a real special spot right over here on my shelf.
Sounds good, Mark. I'll send you one.
Okay, cool. So I'm also curious about, and I don't know how. Again, I've got time. What got you into film in the first place? What was that spark for you, just as a filmmaker? Period, not just with Snakehead, but overall.
I mean, I've always loved anything creative. I love everything from drawing to photography to art to music, and I just when I discovered film, I realized that it's actually the combination of all of these arts all together into this one epic sort of medium, and that really realized, like, that is the ultimate medium for me. And that moment was really exciting, right? Really, really exciting for me. And what I'm trying to say here, when I just never knew that it was even a possibility. I think growing up as Asian American in San Francisco, this is 80s, 90s, like, being in the film industry was just not, it was like being an astronaut or being a politician. It just wasn't possible, And when I got to UCLA, I remember all these film students. I was like, that sounds so cool. But, there's only 12 film students in the whole per 4,000, per class, right? So you're like, you can't get into that because I don't know how to write. And, it's different. So that's the only way you could get into film, right? Unless, you have some family member in film, right? Film, the industry is still, it's bigger now, but back in the day, it was a very fraternal and small knit group, and it was very hard to get in. It was very hard to get in. So I never thought even this was an option. And it wasn't until I really met Jackson Leong, and because he went to film school and he went to graduate film school, he knew what it took. And when I see, and he was willing to take me under his wing and really, give me my formal years of filmmaking training.
Now, and how did you meet him? What was that first encounter?
The first encounter with Jackson Leong was in the Japanese American National Museum at Janum in the Media Center. He was leaving to make his first feature film, and I was gonna go and serve as like a technical support because I knew about computers and stuff like that back then. And he was leaving that job, which he built that place, and he wanted to, he was supposed to train me and just explain to me what's going on, what kind of equipment they have there. And I found he was a filmmaker. I was like, oh, that's cool, man. He's like, oh, why are you leaving? He's like, oh, I'm gonna make my feature film. I was like, oh, cool, man. What's it? Is it got Asian characters? It's like, yeah, they're all Asian. And I was like, cool, man. And then we just hit it off. Like we found like kindred spirits, and just what excited us. And we were both, hoop heads at the time. And, I basically, he left that job, and then I followed him, eventually. And that's how I first got into all this.
Okay, it's always interesting, and like many people have said that everyone's journey to film is different. Even if you went to film school, that doesn't mean that you had the same journey. It's still a different experience depending on who you are and what time frame it was. It for the 80s.
Yeah, 90s, and that's the crazy thing. There's just really no path, right? You don't go a lot. I mean, like you're a doctor, you go medical school, and you're a doctor, and you find a job. It's pretty easy. But film, every single person that has gotten any kind of success or has been in this long enough has a different story of how they got to where they are. Whether it be through an agency, whether it be friends, whether it be through some brand, some marketing, some financial, I don't know. There's always a different path. And I think that's what makes this game, it's really difficult to break in. And then, even getting in, once you're there, it's very, very difficult. So, you're really competing with a lot of people for a small amount of jobs and spaces. And, I think that's what, kind of makes this, keeps us growing, keeps challenging us as filmmakers.
That's well said. And I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. You mentioned, growing up in San Francisco, and you just didn't think it was possible at that time to be a filmmaker in the late, in the late 80s and early 90s, that type of time frame. Did you have any kind of like family or friend pressure to like, what the hell are you thinking, trying to even go into film? Was it like you need to do the doctor lawyer typical thing, like what I kind of experienced?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sixth generation Chinese American, so you look like you're third, second. My parents, my dad's a doctor, and I always said I was going to be a doctor from like, I don't know, third grade. I'm like, I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up. So all the way to high school, going to college, actually, even I said I'm going to be a doctor. And I always thought being a doctor would be good and stable, but I didn't really have my heart in it. And I was like I was like, oh, okay, I can do that, so then on the side I can do my creative things that I want to explore. And when I discovered about film in college, I came home and told my dad and my parents, and they're actually, yeah, great, do whatever you want to do that makes you happy. And my dad knows that, being a doctor is not easy. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of school. There's a lot of tests. And if your heart's not in it, then you're not going to make it through. So he never thought I was actually going to be a doctor. I was good. I was a good Asian American kid, though, that, I thought I wanted to be. I was like, oh, that's a good thing to be. But, I mean, if I want to be a filmmaker, this just sounds so like I'm going to be an astronaut. It's like not possible, really.
Okay, well, that's good that there is some sense of, I guess, realism, you could say, perhaps from your dad or from family members.
Yeah, well, I just think about it, it's generational, right? I mean, almost all my friends that come from immigrant families, like they're having their kids now. Like if your kid wanted to be a filmmaker, you'd be like, yeah, do it. You want to be an actor, do it. You want to be a clerk, do it, whatever. And I think that's just a matter of the immigrant come from a different perspective, right? The first generations, they left their homeland and they came here for a better life, right? And so you're not here to be an artist, we left our homeland, and that's really crazy. I think that's the thing that what fascinates me about the story of the immigrant is that, you're basically giving up everything, your language, your food, your world, to a place that you have no idea what it's like. You hear stories, you've seen things, but you really have no idea, right? And usually you're fleeing because you're poor. So, you know, it makes it that journey even more like you know, brave, you know, naive, you know, all sorts of things, right? And to me, that's an adventure, right? And you know, growing up as sixth generation, you know, there's not a lot of adventures in my life, you know, at this point, right? But that's what will be like. I always tell my friends, like, yeah, I'm basically what your kids are gonna be, you know. That's what's gonna happen. They're gonna be real American because that's what we are.
Yeah, no, and you make, I mean, really good points that if you're coming from an immigrant family, that first generation, it's cliche, but it's true that they want something better for their kids. That's why they left, and yeah, they left something that was everything familiar to them to everything unfamiliar to them. And I'm fourth generation, Yonsei, Japanese American here, and so, like, I don't know the language. My parents don't know the language. I'd have to go back to my grandparents to actually hear Japanese, and they've all passed on since.
Sure.
And so,
yeah.
yeah.
Have you seen The Terror season 2?
I have no. To answer your question, simple. No, I have not.
You know what I'm talking about, though, right?
No, I don't.
Oh, you haven't. Oh, it's so The Terror is a horror anthology on AMC. And the second season is about Japanese Americans, and you know, there's obviously some horror elements to it, but it takes place like right when the Japanese Americans are becoming interned, but it focuses around these Japanese American families. So yeah, I don't know. I'm surprised. I feel like everyone needs to watch. Every Asian American should watch that because it's such a great sort of way to tell that story. I mean, if you're not into horror, then no good, but it's just cool, you know, like we talk about representation, everything. That is true representation.
I just wrote it down. Yeah, no, I'll definitely check it out. I'm a horror guy, so yeah, this is perfect for me. There's the reason I kind of half smirked is that because my viewing habits are so bizarre that there's so many cool things out there, especially streaming ways that I don't freaking know. Even the popular ones I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Sure. Well, I mean, you know, I thought you're a Japanese American. It's like those things. It's pretty amazing that show exists. Yeah, no, it sure sounds like it, and especially for me, with we have several family members that were in those internment camps in Minidoka and other parts of the U.S. So that hits home, you know, really close to the bone, really. But yeah, with that horror element, I'll definitely check it out. But and you talked about like with the immigrant part, and obviously that's a big part in Snakehead. And I'm curious, when you said that you read that true life part of human smuggling that was going on, and you were surprised when you found out it was a woman, that made you go, look, whoa, this is really interesting. That could be a good story. And then you kind of mentioned through the timeline that Lulu was attached to the project, and then, you know, other things happened through no fault of anyone, really. That did you ever think about not having a female lead as in the film, or did you ever think like no, it's always been about a woman.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, I have a lot of strong Asian women in my life. You know, my grandmother, my mother, and you know, all these other strong Asian women that I know that hold down the community, hold down the families. They are the bosses. And you know, there's this idea that men are the face and the boss and the leader and the alpha, but you know, a lot of times, like, who actually making the decisions? It's the women, and we never got to see that. And so that's why I you know, what attracted me most the story about, you know, I was like, oh yeah, I understand. I know what that woman looks like. You know, I know what that embodies, and I wanted to celebrate that and use that as characters in this film.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm just curious about also with that. How did you end up with Shuya in the lead role?
Through, you know, the Asian American community is really small. You know, especially the acting one. They're pretty small. So you know, my producer Brian, like, he knew her, and he's like, hey, can you audition for this? And she did, and me and my wife were blown away, and like, that's it. That's Sister C, you know.
Okay, very cool. And yeah, I also see where we've gone well past our time length. But so people that, if you're just tuning in right now, we're talking to Evan about Snakehead, which is hitting theaters and released next Friday, the 29th of October. It's coming up real soon. So Evan, to kind of wrap this up, what is some advice you would give a new filmmaker?
I mean, a new filmmaker, I give the advice of like this, respect the craft. It's a marathon, and it's going to be a lot of, I would say, embracing the failure, because you have to fail. I mean, we place so much on all of this and all these films and all this work that we do, but the process, it takes failure to get to this, to a place, and it's a marathon. Like I always talked, even before all this, I always celebrate the fact that I'm still in this, because it's just a struggle to survive as an artist, as a filmmaker, right? We're talking about contract jobs, indie shooting jobs, those things, that's what pays the bills, and those are very far and few between when you're trying to, to tell your story. And and be passionate. If you're not passionate about whatever you're working on, it's not going to be good. So you have to make sure the stories you're telling you're passionate about.
Okay, some really good advice. And I know I had another filmmaker say that we learn more from our failures than our successes. So we need to be okay to fail and fail forward, and move from that. So everyone, again, Snakehead opens on the 29th of October. Evan, thank you so much, sir, for taking the time to talk with me for almost an hour about things. I really appreciate that. And I love doing part twos of my interviews, and part threes, part fours. I have guests come back all the time. So if you're ever interested in coming back on, I would love to explore things a little further with you when you have some more time in your schedule.
Yes, thank you, Mark. This was a lot of fun. Appreciate you, and appreciate what you're doing here.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night over there, and everybody watch Snakehead. And thank you for joining us in the chat, and those that are watching down the road, thank you for tuning in, and definitely check out Snakehead. And you can check out all of Evan's work through his film company, which is also linked in the YouTube description right now. So yeah, Evan, I will get my details to you for that DVD, and I can't wait I'll make sure to post it all over social media once it shows up.
All right, man.
Thanks all right. Take care. Bye-bye.